Let me also take the opportunity to indicate that, as shared in the chat, the presentations as well as the recording for today's webinar will be available after the webinar. And so the link is shared. So we know that there are others who may not be able to join us, or you yourselves may want to take, to go over what has been shared for your own benefit and the benefit of your colleagues and students. So we want to invite you to go to the link afterwards. And we look forward to, as I said before, hearing from you in today's webinar. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Faryal Khan, recently appointed Program Specialist for Education at the UNESCO Caribbean Office. On behalf of UNESCO, CARICOM, and the Regional Education Group for Latin America and the Caribbean, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our 6th webinar on education. Today's webinar focuses on technical and vocational education and training in times of COVID-19, challenges and opportunities for the Caribbean region. The global 19 outbreak impacts not only our health, lives, and economies, but also the labor market and the education sector. The resulting economic crisis is leading to a major recession across key economies and sectors, which could worsen into a durable depression. The effects of the decline in tourism will be felt in particular by micro and small enterprises, which represent a huge proportion of the hotel and restaurant sector. Skills development is going to be a major part of the policy response to the massive loss of jobs to reorient workers towards employment or entrepreneurship. Moreover, the crisis is spurring trends which call for major shifts in the demand for skills in the labor market that TVET systems will need to address. For example, digitization. While some institutions and members of the TVET community may have already garnered valuable experience with online learning strategies and are set up to offer large-scale online solutions without much delay, others are still in the learning phase and may find it useful to hear about learning and working solutions that can be adapted to local contexts and implemented quickly. Today's webinar offers a platform for mutual support, knowledge sharing, and peer learning, where we can together discuss the current TVET-related challenges and opportunities in the Caribbean and learn from each other's experiences. I extend a very warm welcome to my colleague, Dr. Raymond Iriarte, Education Program Specialist, ORIALC, UNESCO Santiago office, whose commitment to technical and vocational education in the LAC region spurred our initial discussions and made it possible to have this dialogue today. Raymond, would you like to just say hello to everyone?
Good morning, Farial. Good morning, everyone. It's a very big pleasure. We're very happy to be able to have this meeting. It's a very fitting time when we are thinking about the future of TVET amidst this pandemic. So just a big hello to everyone, and I hope we have a very enriching and fruitful meeting.
Thank you, Raymond. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the distinguished members of the panel who are joining us for today's dialogue. We have with us today Dr. Marcia Rowe-Amond. Would you like to turn on your video, Dr. Marcia?
My video is on. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all your panelists and attendees. It's a pleasure being here. Thanks for the opportunity to have this dialogue.
Dr. Marcia is the Senior Director, TVET Development and Support Systems at Heart Trust. And we are honored to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have with us Ms. Pauline Whiteman, Chief Executive Officer, Caribbean Association of National Training Authorities, CANTA. Would you like to turn on your video? Thank you.
Good morning. My video is already on. On behalf of the Caribbean Association of National Training Authorities, I sincerely thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are honored to have you with us. And we have with us Dr. Ruby S. Allain, Vice President, Quality Assurance and Institutional Effectiveness, University of Trinidad and Tobago. The floor is yours to meet everybody.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to participate in the webinar, and I'd like to thank UNESCO and the CARICOM Secretariat for the opportunity. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. We are truly honored to have you with us. Thank you. And Dr. Michael Axman, Senior Specialist for Enterprise, Productivity and Vocational Training at the ILO Center in Montevideo, Uruguay. Dr. Michael, would you like to meet everyone?
Good morning to all of you from Montevideo, Uruguay. It's a pleasure to be on this panel, and it's an honor. Thank you very much, UNESCO and CARICOM, for organizing this, and looking forward to a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We are really very important to have this link with ILO and the work that you are carrying out. So we are very happy to have you with us. And we have a special representative, a youth representative, Kendall, who is with us and who will also share perspectives from the youth. So Kendall, if you'd like to say hello to everyone.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I hope you all can hear me clearly. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd like to thank you all for having me. I hope I could bring a good perspective to the whole forum today.
Thank you so much. Your voice is very important to us. So thank you for being on board with us. And now, without much ado, I'm very happy to give the floor to our colleague, Dr. Raymond Iriarte from UNESCO Santiago office. Dr. Raymond, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Farial. I will just quickly share my the presentation on the screen. I'm not sure you can see it right now.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, thanks for confirming. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Again, it's really a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to see again some colleagues that I already met before in some events, and some people that have been championing for TVET in the Caribbean. And I think it's a very good opportunity to meet and exchange some ideas. And this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to just briefly take some time to refer to some ideas and some starting understandings of what we have at UNESCO regarding the impact of COVID-19 and the challenges and opportunities for the Caribbean region. First is to recognize, and we've heard this a lot before, this is an unprecedented crisis we're living in, and COVID-19 has had a very strong impact also on TVET system, just as it had on the general education at large. We know that learning has been interrupted. In the case of TVET system, it has been in workplaces, but also in classrooms. According to UNESCO's data, we had by early April 2020 around 91.3% of students around the world affected by the pandemic. Today, we have 60.5% registered. There are some solutions that have been implemented, especially online solutions in those countries that are prepared to provide this kind of training programs. Also, we have seen that work-based learning was particularly affected by the lockdown, although some work-based learning has been continued in some companies that were able to still keep open and provide these opportunities for students. And we've also seen some cuts in apprenticeship offers, especially in those areas that Farial already mentioned, in areas like hospitality and tourism and aviation and leisure. This is where we stand right now. This is the current status of school closures around the world. We see that we still have some countrywide closures in most of our region in Latin America and the Caribbean, except for some countries like Uruguay and Ecuador and Nicaragua, which have already opened schools, and they are transitioning to this new normality that it's being called right now. And some other countries that have done the same in Australia and New Zealand and Japan and France, we see in this map. And but there are also some localized school closures still in place. Some of the responses that TVET systems have been developing in Latin America and the Caribbean include the following points. We see that there were some remote training provision, and it was very different from country to country. We have seen a lot of internet applications in countries where internet access is more available. But we have also seen some solutions involving the use of educational TV. We've seen a lot of collaboration from TV companies and to provide spaces for these solutions. We've also seen some radio, or even in those areas where these technological solutions could not work, like internet, TV, or radio, there were some printed materials that were distributed from the ministries of education. This is one of the strategies. We've also seen a lot of teacher training, strengthening capacities of teachers in terms of digital skills. And this has been considered as the most important aspect of the strategies dealing with this pandemic. There's also been a lot of development and also classification and collection of educational resources on TVET. We've seen that there is a lot of demand and also a lot of requests made by different countries in terms of educational resources for particular training fields, which are not so easily available as in other areas. We've also seen a lot of work reorganizing the curriculum, the training programs. Also, the academic schedule had to be rearranged in some cases. Some countries have postponed the training that takes place in workshops, in laboratories, and everything that has to do with development of practical skills has been postponed until schools open again. And they have reorganized the contents. There's also been some work done in assessments for certifications where countries have been thinking about how to deal with the assessment, how to prioritize the assessments that are more important and that actually lead to certification for demanded jobs. Also, there's a lot being done on communication and information services. We've seen a lot of demand for information and communication in schools, with students, with parents, with stakeholders. And this has been also very important to keep up to date with what's happening and what kind of measures are being applied, what the meaning of each measure is, and what kind of impact they are expected to have. And the final thing we've seen as part of the response of the TVET system is a lot of partnerships, a lot of reaching out for collaboration. And this has also been very important: collaboration among countries, collaboration from the private sector, collaboration from international agencies. So these are basically the main points that we've seen as important to highlight in terms of the TVET system response in our region. Some challenges that are
Mon, you have a minute or two if
okay.
I'm keeping, thank you.
I will please quickly close. Some challenges we see for TVET transition. We see the need to strengthen TVET leadership, to work on the development of educational resources, to strengthen teaching skills, to assess the training quality that we've been offering during the crisis, to look for, to imagine future scenarios in the labor market and future scenarios for education, to strengthen the development of practical skills which have not been developed in this time, and also to bridge the gap regarding the technological constraints. And very quickly, some points to look to promote more resilient TVET systems. We need to keep monitoring conditions of remote training in order to provide support when it's needed. We need to assess learning losses and develop plans for catching up with students. We need to take this opportunity to introduce new skills in training programs, such as digital skills or also hygiene skills, which are important. We need to address the socio-economic, socio-emotional challenges related to the reopening of schools. We need to strengthen the capacity of the TVET system to respond to future disruptions. We also need to expand the hybrid approaches for TVET provision and strengthen leaderships. We need to think of TVET as part of the economic rebound strategy in our countries. TVET should be part of the solution in terms of the economic rebound. And for that, we need to assess the emerging skills needs in the labor market. It is also important to develop skills to recover, retrain, and enable access to new jobs. In all these, we need to focus attention or our actions on most vulnerable students affected by the pandemic. And we need to seize the opportunity to reimagine, reset, and transform world education. And finally, we think that a more resilient system needs to look for partnerships, strengthen the capacity to build partnerships with local, regional, and international organizations. So this is what some initial ideas that I wanted to share with you. And thank you very much for the time. Farial, over to you.
Thank you so much. So what I'm hearing is that the crisis is offering us many opportunities, in fact, to reimagine TVET, to embed new skills in TVET, to be more responsive and agile to the needs of the labor market, and to see how we can then, provide those skills using new information technologies to our learners, so that we can be, really fast forward into the 21st century. So thank you very much, Dr. Raymond, for your very thought-provoking presentation. And I'm delighted now to give the floor to Dr. Marcia Rowe-Amond, the Senior Director, TVET, Development and Support Systems from HEART. HEART is a UNIVOC center, part of the UNIVOC network. So we are very much looking forward to hearing from you, Dr. Marcia. The floor is yours. We are very to open the panel discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Doc. It's really very opportune that we have this kind of discussion. It's really a challenge that unites us all. How to reposition, ensuring that we are offering quality TVET during this crisis. I've had some discussions with my colleagues as I've thought about this presentation. And what has struck me is that we are really united in terms of the challenge and the issues that face us. So we will get now an opportunity to just go through to see what we're doing here in Jamaica, the Heart Trust NTA, how we have responded. And I'm a part of, as was said earlier, the Heart Trust NTA, where we focus on training, assessment, and certification. We offer programs from levels 1 to 6 in a variety of TVET areas. And I have some there on the PowerPoint, the major sectors in which we offer training. Construction, agriculture, the creative industries, manufacturing, mining and quarrying. In the services, like the hospitality services, retail, and in tourism, and in a few others, along with ICT. Our enrollment was for 2019 was in excess of 99,000 students, and we had certification in excess of 22,000. So just a little context there. So what has been this current situation as it relates to the COVID crisis? We have had disruption in our programs, and the disruption extends to all levels. Our institutions have closed for the most part. Students and instructors were not coming in, and the focus was on offering programs virtually in the online space. We found that in this, many of our students or teachers or instructors had limited access to Wi-Fi. So there was disruption. It was not necessarily a smooth process. Our teachers or instructors have used various applications to ensure that the momentum for teaching and learning continues. In some cases where our trainees do not have access to Wi-Fi, they have prepared learning packages and they have dropped them off at central locations, and sometimes the trainees have come in and they have been able to pick them up. In other cases, we have had some of our institutions where small groups, very small groups, have come in to do the practical areas, because we have found that this is very necessary. But they have had to observe the protocols that are in place in a very strict way. We have also done some repurposing of assessment in terms of looking at our assessment items, increasing the assessment items, and providing the leverage, the latitude to do some of the theoretical areas online. We have also focused during all of this in terms of giving our instructors competencies in making them more confident to negotiate and to offer learning in an online space. The IT support, both where hardware and software are concerned, there has been increased strengthening of that. And we are looking at a September 2020 reopening with strict protocols in place. These are some of our applications that we have found our instructors have used. They have been using WhatsApp very heavily. Microsoft Teams, the Moodle platform has also been used. Some have been using Google Classroom, and to a lesser extent, we have seen applications such as WebEx, Zoom, Socrative, Edmodo, and very few phone calls and emails. But these are not necessarily exclusively used. They are being used in different combinations. So we may see that while using Moodle, Zoom is incorporated. What have we done to ensure that we continue, that we do sustain the momentum where teaching and learning are concerned? The focus has been on offering programs in the virtual online space, getting our students to come online, interacting with them online. We have also engaged our national telecommunications companies to provide data packages for our students who are having real challenges sometimes in accessing data and having the resources to purchase the data, and have to make some choices between basic needs like food and data to come online. As I said earlier, we have looked at the capacity building of our teachers, our instructors. We have developed a partnership, and Ramon spoke to partnerships. So it is important for us. We have engaged with the Commonwealth of Learning, and we are aiming to train in excess of 400 instructors to really have the competencies we have started. And we are using a special model where peers are being used as mentors to deliver the training. So they're all online. The peers are the ones mentoring and developing the competencies to repurpose and to deliver programs in an online space. At the end of that training, we hope that each participant will come out with a complete module ready to deliver online. We have also been focusing on shorter programs with an industry focus. We refer to these as job certification programs, where they are really directly aligned with jobs and key competencies, and developing programs in these areas and supporting these with videos. So we have embarked on an approach to developing videos. So far, we have identified that we will need approximately 220 videos to support these programs. And we are working with, again, this is partnership, or production and broadcast or television broadcasting companies to really produce and to get these videos up and running on our different TV stations. At the same time, we are also working on the instructional manuals to support this. So the participant will benefit from the videos, the instructional manuals, and then come in to have the training and the assessment. We have also put together a distance learning framework that focuses on the strengthening of the IT infrastructure the training and upgrading of our instructors. So far, the resources we have available to us are our online programs, our videos, our hardware and software resources, and we're increasing internet coverage in communities where we have limited access to the internet. Our main challenges, including everybody in this, we put a lot of emphasis on. Okay, thank you, Dr. Khan. I'm almost done. All right.
Please take a minute. Please take a minute or two to wrap up. It's okay.
Okay.
But we'd like,
but I'm getting there. We have getting inclusivity, ensuring that our students who are at risk and marginalized still receive training for their empowerment, still receive training for their growth and getting them ready for the workplace. Reliable access to internet is also another challenge. Having devices both for our instructors and our students, keeping our students engaged. It's not always easy to keep them engaged and to sustain the momentum in an adult learning environment, in this kind of online environment. Ensuring that we are focusing on quality teaching and learning even as we offer programs online, and maintaining the standards for acquisition of the practical skills and for assessment. What are the possibilities for regional cooperation? I see that there are opportunities for us to continue to upskill, to upgrade our instructors, to develop programs and to share those programs in an online space, to create toolkits so our students can use it in their own time, at their own pace, to develop the technical competencies, and to share resources such as videos and simulators.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That's my last slide. Look forward to continuing with this discussion.
Thank you so much. Because as we know, Heart Trust is a UNIVOC center, part of the UNESCO network of global centers focusing on technical and vocational education and training. And I see equity and inclusion is central to your work as you make efforts to keep continuity of learning and to transform the lab experience or the work space. It's not an easy challenge to deal with. So it has been very good to hear from you. And now it is our pleasure to invite Ms. Pauline Beitman, the Chief Executive Officer of the Caribbean Association of National Training Authorities, CANTA. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, again, and thank you for having me this morning. The Caribbean Association of National Training Authorities has a critical role to play in the movement towards standardized and consistent delivery of TVET, more specifically the Caribbean vocational qualifications, the basis of which are the regional occupational standards. The COVID-19 pandemic has significantly impacted the operations of CANTA, and so we need to address the potential limitations to the progress of these CANTA initiatives. There's an urgent need for us to do things differently and more efficiently to future-proof our operations while increasing resilience during this pandemic. With respect to the current situation, and you would have seen a lot of this from the previous panelists, and this is based on what was gleaned from just a couple of CANTA members within CARICOM. There has been limited delivery and assessment for both national vocational qualifications and the Caribbean vocational qualifications, and limited delivery both in workplaces and in the classroom. So there's limited use of online approaches to TVET. Training providers, they facilitate smaller groups of trainees to ensure adherence to social distancing guidelines. They had to implement rotation schedules for practical training, of course, to accommodate more trainees.
Excuse me,
In
Dr.
addition to
Watson.
that, yes.
I'm so sorry, we're not seeing your screen. We're not seeing your
Oh,
presentation.
sorry.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so let me close, exit and come back.
All right, that's fine.
Let me get back to share because it's on share screen. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it was on share screen.
That's wonderful. It's coming up now.
It's coming up now?
Yes, that's it. Put it in presentation mode. Yes. Run slideshow. Yes.
Okay, great. So I won't bother to go back. So yes, so I was on this slide with respect to a lack of relevant guidelines, this current situation. We do not really have sufficient guidelines for the safe operations of classrooms, labs, and workshops, and also lack of guidelines for the conduct of external verification exercises, which of course would have stymied our progress. With respect to the measures being taken by Cantor to ensure the continuity of skills development programs, in the short term, we would have partnered with CXC, the Caribbean Examinations Council, to outline an approach to the award of the CVQ in secondary schools in 2020. Cantor is also working with stakeholders, inclusive, of course, of CARICOM, CDB, UNESCO, and the OECS. Our first and immediate need is the development of guidelines for the delivery and assessment of the CVQ. And the CDB has pledged support to ensure the completion of these guidelines within a reasonable time frame. With respect to the resources or materials available in the region to support continuity of skills development, Cantor has partnered with the Commonwealth of Learning to develop online programs for the CVQ assessor, verifier, and instructor training programs. These have all been developed. And of course, Cantor posits that established resources, wherever they exist, can be applied to the TVET sector. And so in this regard, we welcome suggestions and assistance from all stakeholders. Our main challenges, we in the region are well aware that there's a lack of a full-time Cantor secretariat. Therefore, the achievement of objectives has been hampered. As the umbrella body for the NTAs, Cantor must be able to set policy and put regulations in place to guide the work of the NTAs. However, at this time, we are challenged given the current constraints. For example, there is an immediate need to revise the Cantor quality assurance guidelines. In the context of the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, other challenges include, of course, in addition to developing the guidelines as indicated previously, we need to prepare for the reopening of schools. These challenges relate specifically to the delivery and assessment for the CVQ. There's a need to bring workshops, labs, etc. into the virtual space using online tools such as Blackboard, Academy, etc. We need to encourage and prepare instructors so that they can utilize the blended approaches to teaching and training. We also need to be able to facilitate the professional development of these instructors and teachers in the use of new technologies. In addition to that, we need to train and retrain our course developers so that they'll be able to convert course content to be delivered using online modalities. And given the practical nature of TVET, there's a need to come up with approaches that will determine the mix of virtual teaching, simulations, and direct physical interaction without compromising the quality of the qualification. Some territories have also been experiencing difficulty in finding TVET teachers or instructors, that is, trained TVET teachers and instructors, for a number of reasons. And of course, the pandemic has exacerbated the situation. And so we need to come up with different novel approaches to fill the void. For example, we can think of sharing trainers among institutions. Another suggestion is using virtual technologies to guide initial training and then sharing specialist trainers to provide face-to-face skills development.
Thank you.
With respect to
Thank you for wrapping up in the next minute. Thank you.
Okay. With respect to the IT infrastructure, we know that the delivery and assessment for the CVQ is paper intensive, and there's a need to easily store, retrieve, and archive information, which an IT infrastructure will definitely allow. In addition, with respect to the online training for assessors and verifiers, we need to be able to have the capacity to host these online programs. Cantor will continue to collaborate with regional and international partners whenever and wherever possible. One of the strategic outcomes of the National Training Agency of Trinidad and Tobago's first TVET e-convention is the rollout of focused interactive working sessions for Cantor members and, of course, other relevant stakeholders. This initiative is in its embryonic stage, but will be supported by CARICOM, Ms. Jennifer Britton, Deputy Program Manager, ICT for Development of the CARICOM Secretariat. And we have already identified some possible topics for these sessions, including shaping the future of TVET and CARICOM, linking TVET and ICT, and enhancing skills for a resilient CARICOM, innovating TVET. Cantor is also working with CXC, the Caribbean Examinations Council, with a view to having CXC host the online CVQ assessor, verifier, and instructor training on their new Learning Institute platform.
Thank you so much.
UNESCO has also, just one last point, UNESCO has also pledged support for the development and implementation of a rapid assessment report on CARICOM states, which will assist us in identifying needs to ensure that the sustainability of TVET and skill development in the region. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It is fascinating how Cantor has optimized on partnerships to resolve some of the emerging challenges, and really do point out the need for policy and regulatory frameworks to be put in place, the need for capacity development, systems for learning management and assessment. So thank you for a very rich, very thought-provoking presentation, and we will discuss as we move into the interactive dialogue. But we have with us now Dr. Ruby Allain, the Vice President of Quality Assurance and Institutional Effectiveness at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. So welcome, Dr. Ruby. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Fariel, and good morning to all. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, let me get that up. And I'm sharing.
It's coming up. Yes, we see it now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. And we've been talking for a while about a number of the challenges experienced in the Caribbean and Latin America. And also we've been looking at some of the opportunities. And so I'd like to focus perhaps on some quality issues, because we have been forced into what we can describe as an emergency remote teaching mode. We're doing online learning, but in many cases we haven't prepared for it. And so we've been forced into a situation where we can be said to be building the plane while we're flying it. One of the challenges with this is that not all institutions were prepared to go into online teaching mode. And moving from face-to-face to online is a transition that needs to take place. And we want to be assured that the quality hasn't been compromised by institutions who are making this shift. There's a need for an analysis of the impact of making this shift on institutions, and in particular, the impact on the trainees and on the quality of training that they would have received. At the National Training Agency in Trinidad and Tobago, we've been talking to our institutions and collecting data from them in terms of the changes that they would have made. And at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, we've been doing an analysis of the impact of the measures that we've taken on our student population and on teaching and learning. And I think it's very important for all of us to collect this data and to use the data to make decisions going forward. So I've tried to categorize the issues and the challenges that we're facing under three broad headings. The first is access. We have issues of access because, of course, we have physical restrictions in terms of space. And when we are in the space, we have physical restrictions in terms of the distance between learners. So immediately, we have issues in terms of accommodating the full number of learners if we were in the physical space. Outside of the physical space, when we use the technology, we also have challenges in terms of access because of the unreliability of our internet connectivity at times, and also because of the lack of the devices in some cases to make that connection. So that leads sometimes to compromises in terms of the quality of education that our learners are able to access. If we look beyond access, we can look at quality issues in teaching, learning, and assessment. So not all trainers and instructors were prepared to move into online mode. And that has an impact on the quality of teaching and learning as well. I had an opportunity to look at a class being done online or remotely recently, and the lecturer was actually calling notes out and the students were taking the notes. Now that's not the correct use of online technology in teaching. So that a lot of time is being lost or not used effectively in this transition because of the weak preparation of some of the instructors and trainers. The curriculum as well, a curriculum that's prepared for face-to-face delivery is not the same as a curriculum that's prepared for online delivery. And so that movement or adjustment of the curriculum in some cases would not have taken place. The trainees or the learners themselves also need to be prepared to benefit from online teaching. And in some cases, there's a need for some improvement in terms of the digital skills. And of course, the area of learner support. When we have our students in face-to-face contact, we are there as lecturers, as trainers, to provide the support that they need. And we have offices that they can visit. When we move into the online mode, then the need for learner support is online, and the technology also needs to support that. And so that transition also has to be made. And of course, the integrity of the assessment is also an issue, because we want to be assured that at the end of the day, the certification that is being awarded would have adequately been supported by the assessment of the skills that the learner should have acquired. And the third category I want to talk about briefly is the issue of equity. And I think this is perhaps the biggest one for us, because as we make the shift to online learning, not all of the technology is affordable to everyone. So we need to look at equity in terms of the widening gap between perhaps those who most need education but could least afford it, and those who have the capacity and the affordability to acquire what they need. In some cases, our learners do not have the devices, they do not have the smartphones, they do not have the tablets or the laptops. And so although we've said that we've made access available, they may not be able to avail themselves of the technology to benefit from it. Then learner readiness is also another area that we need to look at, not only from the point of view of having the technical skills, but also the social readiness to interact in a learning community online and to benefit from the kind of training and demonstrations that are being used. And finally, the socioeconomic conditions under which some of the students live. In some environments, it's not conducive to learning. And so we have students where the gap can widen because they can be left behind. You also run the risk of losing interest among students of a low socioeconomic background when they pause their learning activity and they do not have the motivation to continue. You have a higher risk of dropout. So what opportunities do we have? I'm going to wrap up in 1 minute.
Perfect.
Opportunities that we have going forward would be for us to build institutional capacity in terms of skill development, and that would be for our trainers as well as of our learners in terms of online teaching and assessment, and also, of course, the infrastructure to accommodate it in terms of IT. Improve the digital literacy to enable them to benefit from what is being offered in the training environment, to widen access, and also to increase the participation rate, to use this as an opportunity to leverage the technology, to bring more persons who would have been underserved into the fold of education and training. And finally, to develop a digital mindset that as we move forward, we are going to be forced not only by this pandemic, but by the developments around us to interact digitally. And this is what this pandemic has really brought us to. So I want to thank you very much for the opportunity, and we can discuss some of these things further.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ruby, and thank you for bringing quality right to the forefront of the debate, because while we are facing all these challenges, we must remember that quality continues to be a central concern. Opportunities for strengthening institutional capacities for skills development. So let us keep these issues on our minds as we listen to our last panelist, Dr. Michael Axman from ILO, Senior Specialist for Enterprise, Productivity, and Vocational Training. Dr. Michael, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good morning once again to all of you panelists, and I see 140 participants right now. It's a pleasure to be in this, and I have a short presentation that I would like to share, and let me see if that works.
We see it. Thank you.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Let me do.
We have it.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, from my perspective, from ILO Center for, I would like to let you know a little bit what we have done from the Center for perspective on TVET in times of COVID-19. And I would like to basically start with a slide on explaining who we are. Probably most of you know that ILO and UNESCO are partner organizations in the UN. And here we have in Latin America, Center for as a network of vocational training institutions. We are based in Montevideo, Uruguay. And as you see from the map, we have quite a number of institutions that we work with, not only in Latin America, but also in the Caribbean. So lately, I think last year, we had a workshop in Jamaica with Marsha and colleagues, and we worked in Belize, and Kanta has been one of our members for many years. So you see the network that we have across Latin America and the Caribbean with about 70 institutions in 30 different countries. So there's a little photo of all of us. We are a network of training institutions and a think tank for these 70 institutions in 30 countries. And our idea is basically to advocate vocational education and training in Latin America and the Caribbean, and work with our partner institutions, both on the public and on the private level. And South-South cooperation is what we are advocating a lot. So when I looked at the invitation and I looked at the questions to the panelists, I had basically the same questions that all the others had. And I think what I would like to say is basically how we responded as Sinter to the situation. As pretty much everybody, we went into lockdown in mid-March, and very early on, we decided to organize webinars as the one of today for our members in Latin America, and these webinars were in Spanish. So what was very obvious was that basically everybody found themselves in a very similar situation, and it was very important to be there as a host for these webinars. We had between 100 and 200 participants in our 12 webinars that started in March and ended in June. And we looked at issues like the situation of TVET in general, the situation of apprenticeships, workplace learning, situations of vocational teachers and directors, opening issues, how to open vocational schools again. And there is of course, a documentation on all this, which I would like to share with you if you are interested in some of them. The second thing, the question was which measures have been taken by national governments to ensure the continuity of skills development programs. And I think they, of course, first and foremost were online courses. And there were many issues related to that, the whole issue of digitalization, the issue of access to the courses, the issue of equity. And I think what we found out, not only through our webinars, but through our research that we have been doing, is that it very much depends on the IT infrastructure. And of course, not only of the institutions, but also on the recipients of the programs. The third question to be addressed was available in each country and to support continuity of skills development programs. I think there what we found out in most of the Latin American countries was that there were different settings that institutions had as a basis and also as something to build on. And I mean, we're talking institutions from Mexico, from Costa Rica, from Bolivia down to Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina. What I think became very clear, and also what came out in the previous presentations, was that there was a very strong trend towards digitalization and to adapting to the new normality under different circumstances. The main challenges to guarantee the continuity of TVET programs during the pandemic was, of course, the unfamiliarity of the situations. I think we were all struck by that COVID-19 as it hit, and there were various issues, there were various challenges, there were the issue of lacking resources, missing social dialogue mechanisms, but there were also very strong efforts to redesign. And when I talk about redesigning, it's not only responding to digitalization, but it's also responding to different kinds of programs, to programs that can be built better in the future. And some of you might have the chance to listen to what we organized as a global summit. We called it an ILO Global Summit, and our Director General, Guy Ryder, basically raised the point of building back better, in general, systems of decent work, but also systems of vocational education and training. And I think there are the opportunities that we could look at together also as we work in your region, as we work in the English-speaking Caribbean and in the French-speaking Caribbean as well as specialists. We can certainly offer certain courses that we would provide. And as a matter of fact, we are doing courses right now that we prepare for quality apprenticeships, online courses where we will work with countries from Latin America, selected countries, with employers, trade unions, and governments to design programs for the future. I put a link down there at the bottom where we have a publication on how we advocate quality apprenticeships. We're working on pre-apprenticeships, talking about building back better TVET in the future. That could also be something that could come in the portfolio that you have in the future. Definitely, we are not only offering these programs in Spanish, but we are also thinking about providing webinars and training courses in the future. The first one will probably take place in October in Spanish, but we're thinking about something for the Spanish-speaking, English-speaking, and Spanish-speaking world. So let me come to the last slide, last but one slide. We probably have a little bit of time to talk more about the Center for Perspective, TVET, in times of COVID-19. And in case you do have any questions, here is the guy who might help. This is how Michael looked like at the beginning of the pandemic, when I was still having to wear a mask and trying to protect myself against the virus. Thank you very much for your attention, and looking forward to an interesting discussion with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for generously sharing all the resources, the trainings and the webinars you've had, which will be really valuable for us. So we look forward to, learning from those. And we value our partnership with ILO. So we look forward to an interactive collaboration with you. We have with us now Kendall Crepin, our youth representative. The floor is yours to comment on the panelists' presentations, but also to share from the youth perspective challenges and opportunities for TVET in times of COVID. The floor is yours, Kendall.
Hi, good morning again, everyone. I hope you're all hearing me good. My name is Kendall Crepin. I'm a recent graduate from the NESC, the National Energy Skills Center in Point Lisa, in Trinidad. And I just did the welding diploma course, and I'm still there as an apprentice in the apprenticeship program. So far, the seminar has been very informative, and all the presentations have had some very important information. I'm especially impressed by Dr. Allen's not introduction, but bringing in the issue of equity when it comes to training, especially with online and with new technologies. As NESC went into the COVID lockdown, NESC was actually a bit more prepared than other institutions when it came to preparing the students and trainees for the transition to online training. We had already done most of our exams online, but in a controlled environment in school, and that made it easier for us to transition to actually doing exams from home online. So we did some of that. They also started restructuring the curriculum to make it a little easier for the instructors to create exams, create lessons and stuff that can be done from home. And it made things a little easier. The issues, of course, we had are the usual issues that come with these things. Most of the issues relate to equity, and that is where some of the trainees don't have access to computers. Some of them do have access, but they're not very versed in computer usage and those kind of things. So we do a lot of things to try and bridge the gap with those trainees, try to get them. If they don't have proper access, we do get we allow them to come into the campus to use the computers there. We have computer labs at the campus. We also have, every student when we start the course has is issued a student email address, and that email address allows more communication between the school and all the students. Every class has their own informal WhatsApp group, and usually the instructors are part of that WhatsApp group as well. So a lot of discussion can take place, a lot of questions and issues can be hashed out in those environments. As part of the apprenticeship program that I'm in, that has also been negatively affected in that many of the companies that would take apprentices are like slowing down who they take in as well, because they themselves are trying to limit personnel in their workspaces. So that is an issue that, you know, the transition from trainees into the workspace have to deal with. It is something that it's just a matter of the industries getting their bearings and finding the new normal. And that's the only way that we could really deal with that. With regards to training though, the main issue that, especially that I think is the biggest issue for TVET courses, excuse me, is the issue of practical training. Because while everything in terms of theory, in terms of TVET, in terms of the written stuff can be done perfectly online. There's some courses you could do almost entirely online. You could get degrees in typical academic courses online. But with TVET especially, the practical is the most important aspect of the courses. So in that regard, it's important to find flexible workarounds to get in the trainees the practice that they need. Oftentimes, yes, I'm not hearing you, Dr. Khan.
Thank you so much. I think you have concluded with a burning question, and
Yes.
it has been so important to listen to your perspectives, and you bring forward a burning question, and let us pose this question to our panelists along with some other questions. So what Kendall, of course, along with other issues, a question that he is raising is, how can we translate the experience of the practical and the practicum into the virtual space, and respecting social distancing? How can we then assure that the learners get the hands-on experience? Am I correct, Kendall?
Yes, that's correct, because oftentimes we have to, well, what NASC is doing is kind of scheduling trainees so that, you know, a limited amount of trainees can come into the workshop or come into the school at all at any given time. And that is a fairly decent workaround, but more is needed.
Thank you so much. So we give the floor to the panelists now. Thank you so much, Kevi. This was really important for us to hear. And I would like to request the panelists to consider the perspectives that Kendall has shared in responding to the questions. And let me also share maybe 3 more questions from the audience. And then the floor will be given to the panelists to respond to the questions. And I'll request Dr. Ruby Allen, Ms. Pauline Whiteman, Dr. Marcia Rowe, and Mr. Michael Axman to respond to these questions. The first question coming from the participants is, what quality measures are in place prior to COVID-19 in your TVET programs, and what has been implemented now during COVID via virtual TVET instruction? Was this a composition in your development? Did you make some new changes as COVID came up? The second question from Brian Sloot. The first question was from Jamankra. I don't see the full name, but the second question is from Brian Sloot. Can panelists elaborate some more on methods used for teaching practical skills? And this links with Kendall's question. I know there are some challenges around this at the secondary level. And this is from Suriname. The third question comes from Hamilton, and the question refers to online approaches to fill gaps in teaching and training brought about by COVID-19? And how are institutions treating and handling these challenges in the absence of apprenticeships, work experience programs, and trainees not having access to direct skills development in institutions? So these are some of the questions that have come up from the audience, and the floor is with the panelists. Dr. Ruby Allen, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you very much, Fariel, and thank you to our trainee as well, Kendall, for his contribution and for the questions we've received. Dealing with the issue of the practical training, what many of the institutions would have done, of course, is to move to simulations and demonstrations, but that's not hands-on. And so in terms of actually getting hands-on experience on the equipment that they need to use in many cases, it's going to have to be scheduled going forward, keeping the appropriate distance between trainees and trainers, and also observing all of the protocols in terms of health and safety guidelines with respect to COVID-19. And that's basically what we've been hearing from the institutions who are still moving towards having that hands-on experience with respect to some of the training. The quality issue with respect to moving from face-to-face to online, the national accreditation bodies throughout the region have a responsibility to monitor what we call substantive changes that are being made to programs. So if I give the example of Trinidad and Tobago, the Accreditation Council of Trinidad and Tobago allows programs to be offered face-to-face with up to 60% of the contact hours being through blended or online means. If you go above 60%, then you need to have an approval by the Accreditation Council for that. Our institutions were given a transition period during which they can ignore that and offer everything online because we have no choice at the moment. But there are measures in place to provide guidelines for them. And there's also a reporting process where the institutions have to report to the Accreditation Council the measures that they would have taken to go online and what they've been doing to ensure that quality has not been compromised. So that's the shortest way I can respond to those.
Thank you so much. Thank you for a comprehensive response. Absolutely. Ms. Pauline Whiteman.
Yes, thank you. I'll respond to a question that's been posed, or do you expect me to respond to the first question? While the question that asks for information on approaches and methodologies to deliver, while the approaches and methodologies to deliver training online, what are some of the approaches to conduct assessments online, and what measures can be implemented to ensure that it's quality based? I think I'll respond to that question. Candidates can actually or I should say Viva tests can be administered to candidates online. Candidates answer questions that are posed by an examiner online. Then you can have candidates being assessed via online streaming. There's also screen activity recording. All right. And candidates can also submit videos, but in submitting videos, there's a need to ensure that a validation process is in place. These videos must be endorsed by technical experts wherever that session is being recorded. So with respect to any of the other questions, I'll leave it to the other panelists to answer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Marcia Rowe Amonde, the floor is yours. Would you like to take?
I must apologize. The fire alarm is malfunctioning. so you will hear that in the background.
No worries.
Could you just go on to Michael while I just try to minimize the sound, please?
Sure. Michael, Dr. Michael, the floor is yours.
Sure, no problem. Good luck with that, Marsha. Let me take the question on methods for teaching practical skills. I think that was the one by Brian. I think we're all used to teaching audiences that are in the same room, whether we are talking about university teaching, whether we're talking about TVET teaching in secondary institutions or whatever programs we have. And now we're used to something that is completely, different, and now we have to adapt. And I think there's a lot of potential for creativity when it comes to that. And we are just organizing a course now on apprenticeships as Sinta4. And I remember sitting there with a consultant and said, we have to do everything completely different. And she said, yeah, that's right, Michael. But I think there's a lot of creativity out there, a lot of creativity on working with this technology, with Zoom, with other technologies, with WhatsApp, with WebEx conferences, where you can think of organizing processes in a different way, not only lecturing, but also organizing group work, which is quite a challenging thing to organize online, but it is possible. And I was just in a workshop recently where we worked with 15 people in 5 different subgroups, and we discussed a SWOT analysis, and then we came back and reported, and it was just fascinating to see what is possible. So our own digital skills improved a lot by doing this, and it's also something that brings a lot of fun and interest into the learning of vocational education and training. And that, of course, responding to one of the other questions here on the quality assurance measurements, is like, how are we going to assess this kind of training? There's a lot of challenges for the future. How can this be done? What we do online, the courses, the TVET programs that are offered, how can they be measured? How can we assess them in a way that is not just the multiple choice, but that also kind of translates to this new way of learning, to this new way of teaching? Big challenges there. And online approaches as such, I think, give us a lot of headaches, give us a lot of challenges, but it also gives us a lot of chance to think and to rethink vocational education and training in a different way. And as I said in my presentation, building back better TVET. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comprehensive response. Would you like to, Dr. Marcia?
Okay, just very quickly, in response to the quality issues, what we have done in designing the courses online, we have provided a template, and we have worked with the instructors to populate that template. And it pays attention to some key areas where delivering programs are concerned. So we focus a lot on the competencies and ensuring that the competencies are clearly detailed. I'm very sorry for that noise, that it's malfunctioning.
It's okay.
Hope it's not causing too much of a background noise. So we have designed the template, and the upgrading of the instructors, that has also been key. And we have had discussions around learning and how we can make learning more effective. In terms of the practical competencies, I know some instructors have really gotten creative. And one thing they have done is to, even while the trainees are at home, is to help them to build the competencies in their home environment. So for example, the housekeeping instructor has said to them, use what you have available at home, your bathrooms, your rooms, apply the housekeeping skills. Take a video and upload it, and we will talk about it. So it really has to be creative, using what they have available to them and helping them to develop the competencies. So teacher upgrading, having discussions about what does a quality lesson look like in the online space, and increase support for the instructors as they design online programs. So sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we have, no, that's really helpful. And now we have a second round of questions for the panelists. So the questions are coming from Avinash Ramsubagh, and from the University of West Indies in Jamaica. While there are approaches, methodologies to deliver training online, what are some of the approaches to conduct assessments online, and what measures can be implemented to ensure that it is quality-based assessment? So perhaps Kanta might want to take this, maybe Dr. Ruby Allen, you might want to take this question. And then there is another question that TVET is a critical, it's critical in the area of interactive learning and social practices. And how are some of these essential skills for learning addressed pre and post COVID-19? And how are some of the essential skills to practice the learning content being monitored and addressed? So again, linked with the assessment and learning. So perhaps we can start with Kanta and then open up the floor to other panelists.
Okay, thank you. At this time, Kanta, as I indicated during my presentation, we are in the process of reviewing our guidelines, our quality assurance guidelines. And of course, given the COVID-19 pandemic and given the new normal with respect to online training and assessment, these guidelines will need to address both the delivery and assessment. But I would have responded earlier to the question with respect to approaches to conduct assessments online. And I would have mentioned some of these approaches, candidates being made to answer questions posed by the examiner online streaming so that you can actually witness a candidate performing an activity online, screen activity recording, and I believe I heard submission of videos, but of course these need to be validated. So those videos must be endorsed. With respect to the essential skills for learning and so on, the essential life skills to practice the learned content being monitored and addressed. And again, we need to come up with novel ways of assessing, monitoring, and assessing these life skills using virtual technologies to guide, and of course, wherever possible. And this must be also some face-to-face skills development must be included there. It will be limited, but most of the monitoring and so on, we need to come up with ways to do this using the technology wherever possible.
And I can just add with respect to the quality assurance aspect of it, that while the accreditation bodies will not be prescriptive in terms of what must be done by the institution, they will want to ensure three things: the authenticity in terms of the assessment, that it's actually the candidate who is actually undertaking the assessment, himself or herself, the rigor of it, and also the relevance of the assessment to the skills that you want to certify. So as long as those things are covered, then there will be no issue with respect to quality.
Thank you so much. And I would like to give the floor to Michael and Ms. Dr. Marcia for the last round of responses before maybe the panelists will have a last round of responses before we wrap up. And there are some additional questions. I'm going to just check here. So one question is, what application do you use for taking the remote exam? Another question, this came from Norma Faitani. And there's another question from Dr. Eduardo, who says, how are governments responding to the challenges faced as a matter of policy? Are emergency in education policy frameworks in existence? And do they reflect TVET priorities? Because we are in a state of emergency and there is a crisis. So these are two new questions that have arrived. So I put these on the table and invite the panelists 2 minutes each for your last impressions before we wrap up.
I just want to zero in on the issue of the social learning that came up earlier. And I think it's very important as we talk about the online environment that this aspect is still maintained, because it's one of those, the employability skills, the soft skills, that's very crucial to TVET and to getting our graduates ready for jobs. Ability to listen to others and to interact with others. And that can still be done in an online space because you get a chance to have synchronous sessions. So we do allow for the synchronous sessions where we meet and have discussions with the students. Zoom also allows for group work, and even the Moodle platform, it allows for that. And they get opportunities to respond to what other students have to say, so they can have a very engaging discussion going on. So that is still very important to maintain in the online space. At the moment, we use Google. Google is the platform that's used for taking our test and for submitting the results to the accrediting body. I think some of the policy areas that we will need to look at as we move forward will focus on quality and how do we maintain quality in an online environment? How do we focus on the capacity building of our instructors and the IT infrastructure? What are the policy issues around that in making both the hardware and the software available to our instructors?
Thank you so much. That really wraps it up very nicely. Dr. Michael, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Faryal. Just quickly on the aspect of social learning as well. I think what is important when it comes to learning during COVID-19 is to have different cycles of learning that are kind of interrelated. That could be a combination of quizzes, of tasks, of discussion groups, which I've seen in some of the countries in Latin America, especially I think INA and SENAI and SENA in Colombia, SENAI in Brazil, INA in Costa Rica, but also in Paraguay and in Uruguay. I've seen approaches like that where there is an interrelated network of different activities. I think that's important. The question of Dr. Eduardo, emergency policies, I've been quite impressed with some of the constituents that we have in Latin America that have relatively quickly developed emergency policies for the time during COVID-19 and also have looked at what is going to happen after. So there's been a relatively high flexibility and a speed, I would say, that could be noticed. And the application for the remote questions was another question. I think there, I've seen a lot of different approaches in the region in Latin America, ranging from Zoom conferences to WebExes to Google but of course it is important there to make sure that the authors are the ones actually that deliver the tests and the exams. So quality assurance is a big issue during these times, which is something that has to be probably focused on a little bit more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Ruby, Alan, would you like to have the last words before we?
Okay, yes, and it's been a pleasure being here. I think for me, one of the major concerns is that in moving to the emergency mode, that we have not compromised quality. And that word keeps coming up because quality is one of the bigger issues. The policy responses I've seen at the national as well as the institutional level have looked at business continuity really well, but not focusing on quality as much as they should have. So I think we need to bring the focus onto that, and also the issue of equity and whether some persons are being left behind as we move forward with the technology. We want to ensure that we pay attention to those who need it the most.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those, for bringing us back to those issues of quality and equity. Ms. Pauline Whiteman, would you like to have the last word before we wrap up?
Just to endorse all of the comments made by the panelists, in particular, the suggestion made by Dr. Amande with respect to the employability skills. We must keep that in mind, and it mustn't be neglected given the situation we are in now, and to always ensure, based on the comments from Dr. Allen, that we always assure authenticity, rigor, and relevance in those virtual assessments that we'll be conducting in the future. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the panelists and also our colleague Ramon for excellent presentations, and the youth representative for sharing his perspectives, Kendall. Thank you very much to all panelists and presenters. And I would like to thank the participants for their very pertinent questions to move the dialogue forward. You know, as we respond to education crisis due to COVID-19, we must have a sector-wide approach, and we must include TVET as part of our education response strategy to address the challenges. We see TVET as a part of economic recovery, and this strategy, and the TVET strategy, we have an opportunity now to revisit it, to reimagine it, and to transform some of the skills that we can offer to our young learners, and we can address some of the challenges through partnerships and collaborations. I would like to mention that the TVET systems have been very hard hit by the pandemic. And while we have 60.5% of the students who have been affected as of today due to the nature of learning, work-based learning and apprenticeships have been suffered from the disruption. Yet, the governments have been very swift and immediate in their response, and they have responded to the diverse challenges in a very comprehensive manner in the Caribbean region, at both national and also at the sub-regional Caribbean level. And the responses have focused on offering diverse remote training, using distance solutions, improving teacher competences, increasing availability of guidelines and support materials, strengthening partnerships with international and regional organizations and the private sector. And this has enabled us to transition to a new normal, which is confronted with numerous challenges to tackle similar issues at other levels of education. And we are also addressing issues such as socioeconomic conditions and socio-emotional status, the state of learners, their readiness and preparedness of the TVET systems for future scenarios and challenges, and assessment of and how to assess and how to respond to the learning losses. So these are huge challenges, and we take this opportunity to, Kendall's voice has been important. He reminds us of the importance to find flexible strategies to work for the work experience and to translate the practicum in the virtual space. So I think this dialogue has been really critical in creating a network of and a support group opportunity peer learning, and we take these key presentations, the questions, and the dialogue forward as we start getting ready to reopen schools and TVET centers in September. So I think we hope this is going to be the first of our dialogues to see how we can strengthen and rebuild more resilient systems for TVET. So thank you all for your very interactive presentation and also questions. This is the beginning of our discussion on TVET, with more in-depth discussions, analysis, and responses as we move forward. So I know it's going to be August soon, and it is a time for us to maybe take a break for our webinar series, and we will keep you updated on how we continue, and we will keep you updated on our next webinar for the Caribbean region. Take this opportunity once again to thank our partners, CARICOM, and our colleagues at UNESCO Santiago office, also the Regional Education Group for Latin America and the Caribbean, and all the presenters, and especially our sister agency, ILO, that has been, we look forward to our joint collaboration. So have a wonderful summer. We all deserve a little break, so we hope you will have a wonderful break. We will continue in September. Thank you to all, and have a great summer.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think we can conclude our webinar, and all the best for the summer months. Be well, be safe, be healthy.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
And thank
Bye,
you to all
everyone. Thank you
participants.
for the opportunity.
We appreciate all the participants, their participation, and also the wonderful questions that they were asked. And I take this opportunity to thank our team at UNESCO Orial office, our colleagues Yajoi, Lanchi, Paula, our colleagues in the Kingston office, Latoya, and Lucette, Montgomery, and Katharina, for their amazing support, as always, to make this webinar series a success. Thank you very much to all colleagues, to all friends, to all partners.